So we've already seen 8 teams eliminated from the college football playoff, and multiple narratives have been obliterated.
You are Locked On ACC, your daily podcast on the Atlantic Coast Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
For as much as people have complained about the 12-team college football playoff, the drama has been intense. I've been glued to my TV, and I'm excited for the semifinal and the finals coming up. Thank you so much to the everydayers for making Locked On ACC your first listen and your first watch today. We're available free wherever you get your podcasts. We're free on YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. He is Kenton Gibbs from Locked On Wolfpack. I am Alex Donno from Locked On Canes. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL playoffs are almost here, but it's not too late to get in on the regular season action with FanDuel, because right now new customers can finish the season strong with $250 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. So, Kenton, first thing that I've loved so far about this 12-team playoff, and we've gone from 12, we're now down to the final 4 teams. Those 4 teams that had those coveted first-round buys have all lost. All the first-round buys are out. That's one narrative that I love that has been shot down. You work so hard to get that first-round buy. And then the other thing is, we kept hearing about all these SEC hypothetical wins. There's only one SEC team left in the Final Four, and it's the team that's in their first year out of the Big 12. So the Texas Longhorns are carrying the SEC on their backs so far, and we're set for a pretty exciting semifinal round coming up.
Absolutely we are. And even beyond that, I want to make one thing clear. You know, Donno asked me how I was as soon as we hopped in the studio, and I said, I'm great, but I'm not nearly as great as an SEC team in a hypothetical game, because nobody is that great. Nobody. Because, you know, the reality is, again, this podcast is not about being anti-SEC. It's not about being pro-Big Ten. It's not about being pro-anybody. We're going to talk about what's going on in the ACC and then college sports at large that affects the ACC. But I'll tell you this much. I look at these games and I say, this is what the college football playoff was made for. Even if we go with the argument, screw the top 4 seeds, because the top 4 seeds are decided by some contrived metrics like, oh, it has to be a conference champion. Well, what if Notre Dame's one of the top 4 teams? Oh, it has to be a team that, you know, what if a team that lost their conference championship is one of the top 4, all that stuff. Even if we move past that, how many of these teams were the teams that, if we were in the BCS, would have been in the national championship game? None.
Oh, yeah, none.
It would only be 2. Georgia and Oregon.
And Oregon. And they're
all
both
of
out.
These teams would have not been in the deal. How many of these teams would have been available to play if we had a 4-team playoff? You see what I'm saying? Like, this is a situation where exactly what the desired outcome is created. Everybody got their shot. The group of 5 got their shot. Nobody can say Boise State was snubbed, but despite being an excellent team all year, a group of 5 champion had their shot. Everybody has their shot. You know, think about those UCF teams, the one that claimed the national championship, which, by the way, I'm not mad at all. They won their games by an average of 3 touchdowns per damn game. I don't care if you are playing the Little League version of the Mighty Ducks. Shout out to Conway, by the way. He was a hell of a captain. But if that's what's on your schedule, then Charlie Conway and Goldberg just got to get to work. That's just what it is. The Bass brothers may be good Mike linebackers, but, you know, coming downhill ain't the only thing you got to do. Enough Mighty Ducks talk. The reality is you are looking at a situation where everybody has had their turn. Everybody's had their shot, and we are getting the 4 teams that are not the best, the best by metrics that we kind of can't determine because they're so elusive, and it's rankings, and it's who had the most NFL players and all that. No. We're getting a team that when you lined it up, when you said, hey, Georgia, you've got to go prove it. When you say Texas, you've got to go prove it. Clemson, Penn State, SMU, you've got to go prove it. We've got the 4 teams that won.
I'll tell you another narrative that I love is, and I've got no love for Notre Dame being a longtime Miami guy. I go back to when that was a rivalry, but I have so much respect for what the Fighting Irish are doing in this playoff, Kenton. And you think about a few years ago, Brian Kelly ran away from that Notre Dame job because in his mind, Notre Dame is never going to be able to beat teams from the SEC in the playoffs. So Marcus Freeman, who was on his staff, inherits that Notre Dame job, and now he's out there beating SEC teams, getting to the semifinal of the college football playoff. And I look at Notre Dame and I say, it would not shock me if they win it all, especially with the way their defense is playing. Meanwhile, Brian Kelly's sitting home right now. He's not in the playoffs. So I love what Notre Dame is doing because that killed off another narrative. Anybody who thought they or anybody couldn't compete with SEC teams in the playoff, look at them now.
And you know what the funnest narrative I saw get killed off was? I believe it was one Lane Eldrick Kiffin who said, when you're looking at teams, it's not even like the ACC, the Big 10, the Big 12 are even playing the same. They're not even in the same league. Forget same conference. They're not in the same league. It's like the SEC, those top few Big 10 teams, and then everybody else. Well, ask Texas A&M how that everybody else doing. Ask LSU how that everybody else doing. Matter of fact, teach a man's how to squabble in terms of who did USC beat, because I believe they beat another SEC team.
LSU.
Yep. Teach your man's how to squabble, okay? Because it's looking ugly, Lane. It's looking ugly. Your boys getting whooped on. They're getting beat on out there. So teach your man's how to squad. That Bama team everybody swore, they getting beat on. South Carolina was literally, everybody's talking about the whole Brett Bielema arm thing, and it was because South Carolina tried to trick play off of faking that, which is somehow being ignored here. Teach your man's how to squabble, Lane. Okay? Since y'all have blown out Duke and we're throwing the ball until the very last second with your backups in the game, I'm not mad at that, by the way. I want to make it clear. I'm not mad at that at all. Hey, it's your job to score. It's the defense's job to stop you. I don't care if it's 1 second left on the clock. I don't care if it's the first second of the first quarter. But with that being said, again, you got to teach your boys how to squabble if that's going to be the case, because there are multiple too many moments where the SEC came up short to have that narrative of, well, we're not even playing the same game as everybody. Well, what are you playing? Well, these guys aren't even in the same league. Well, I guess, how is it, Donno? Is it the Premier League, then the Champions League? Which one is above the other?
Well, I mean, the Champions League has like the best from all the European leagues, but in terms of like the individual European leagues, the Premier League is considered to be the best one. They're like the SEC of European soccer.
Okay, who's below them? What's the group that, like, if you lose too much, you get relegated down there? What's that league?
Oh, the league championship is like the second tier.
Oh, okay. Well, the league championship teams are kicking your ass, Lane. They're kicking your ass. So, just make sure that next time before you say something like, oh, this is – and last thing, and I'm going to pass it back to you, Don. I keep hearing, well, the SEC's won X amount of the last 20 championships. What the hell do Cam Newton, Tim Tebow, Joe Burrow, Devin White, Dante Hightower, the Patriots head coach was on one of those teams that you're talking about? The Patriots head coach. And you go sit here and tell me that championship is relevant to today. Kiss my ass, man. Tell me what's going on today. And I'm sorry, Granny. I know you're listening. I don't like to cuss, and I definitely don't like to talk about your Bama boys, but I got to. Because we keep living in the past. 20 years ago, imagine how different me and Donno's lives were, okay? Yeah. 20 years ago, I was somewhere watching Static Shock on Saturday mornings, eating some cereal or something, not having a care in the world. All right? We don't care about what happened 20 years ago when Jason White and Adrian Peterson were at Oklahoma. We don't care.
By the way, I mean, it wasn't in the playoff, but that Bama loss to Michigan was so damaging to the SEC hypothetical narrative. But I want to give some respect to Paul Feinbaum, because Feinbaum admitted, like, I was the guy driving the Alabama should be in the playoff train. And he admitted he was wrong about that. Like, he showed accountability for that. I know we've all called out Feinbaum for being an SEC cheerleader, unapologetic about that. and being a gas bag, but I respect Feinbaum for admitting when he was wrong. You can correct me if I'm wrong, because maybe I'm wrong, but have we heard a peep from Kirk Herbstreit about being wrong about that? Now, he did congratulate Michigan on winning the game, and then he blocked the replies. Like, he turned replies off on X after the team was getting cooked. But I don't think he's offered any sort of mea culpa about that.
Kirk just keeps dropping new videos of him and this new damn dog. Kirk, I don't care about you and the dogs.
Yeah.
I don't care about you and the dogs, Kirk. I do not care. I will never care. Get on there and correct what you said. Get on there and tell people. And the worst part to me is not only is he like not owning it, there's this weird thing where he's like, oh, well, I picked Michigan to win the game against Bama. Don't get caught up in the narratives. Okay, so explain to us in detail, Kirkland. Explain to us in detail what teams were supposed to be in if it was clear that Indiana did not belong. If it was clear that SMU did not belong. Explain to us the teams that were supposed to get in. Because I'll give you scotch-free. Ole Miss gets in over Indiana or SMU. Sure. Who's next? Who else? Because you said two teams did not deserve to be in. This is not a zero-sum game where it's like, oh, there's enough sun to shine on everybody. No, this is like a pie where every time you say Donno didn't deserve a slice of pie, Ken didn't deserve a slice of pie in terms of Locked On's best host this month. Well, who the hell would you get to take our place? Don't worry, we'll wait. Stop bringing out pictures of your dog. We don't care, with all due respect. I'm not much of an animal person anyway. Don't care about the dog that passed, with all due respect. God rest his soul. But I don't care. I want to hear you talk about what's going on with these takes and who was the more deserving or who was the better team that should have been in over.
Yeah, well, I want to take a look when we come back at the four teams that are left, and I would love to give our pick. And picking a champion out of these four, it's not that easy. And you talk about killing narratives. I mean, unless maybe you don't consider the games that Penn State has won to be that big. I mean, James Franklin, he's out there killing narratives of his own for the Nittany Lions. You guys want to keep it locked right here. We'll talk about a couple of ACC defensive coordinator jobs that are open. We'll talk about the ACC and the transfer portal. We have a lot more to go right here on this brand new episode of Locked On ACC. Keep it locked. I already know you're keeping it locked to FanDuel. Guys, I'll tell you, I mean, this bowl season has been unpredictable. So it's been a lot of fun wagering on these games, winning some money, and the NFL playoffs are almost here. But it's not too late to get in on the regular season action with FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. Right now, new customers can finish the season strong with $250 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. FanDuel has so many ways for you to pick up a dub. I love betting on which players will score a touchdown, how many points each team will score. It's thrilling. Not only can you bet on who's going to win the game, but FanDuel also has awesome prop bets for stuff like which players will score a touchdown, how many points each team will score. I love the point totals, the over-under, so much more. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your chance at $250 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Thank you for making Locked On ACC your first listen and your first watch today. Make sure for your next listen, you check out our guy Spencer McLaughlin on Locked On College Football. I don't know if Spencer, because he also covers Oregon, I don't know if he's recovered yet from that butt kicking that they suffered at the hands of Ohio State, but Spencer's a pro. I'm sure he's still delivering awesome content even since that game. So make sure you check out Locked On College Football free wherever you get your podcasts and free on YouTube. And I'm trying not to just knee jerk from what they did to Oregon, who was the #1 team in the country for most of the season, undefeated regular season, most consistent team in the country. But I've been so impressed with Ohio State in their 2 playoff games so far, Kenton. So in the semifinals, we've got 5-seed Texas against 8-seed Ohio State on one side. You've got 6-seed Penn State against 7-seed Notre Dame on the other side. And like, I don't know, give me your pick to win the championship, Kenton, because I think I'm riding with the Buckeyes on this one. And a big part of that reason is not only has their defense been playing great, but Jeremiah Smith he's just a cheat code. I mean, you're talking about, we're watching a guy who's probably a future Pro Football Hall of Famer at 18 years old, dominating against 23-year-old grown men at wide receiver. I mean, that dude You need a touchdown. You need a first down. You throw it to JJ. He's been so impressive. So I think I'm riding with the Buckeyes. What do you think? Oh, you're muted.
It's hard to ride against the Buckeyes. The big SEC lobby tried to silence me. Don't worry, we're not going to let them. But anyway,
yeah,
it's
right.
hard
They're playing Texas. Yeah,
exactly. It's hard to ride against the Buckeyes because of talent, but even harder to ride against them because of matchups. We all know that it's not just the fighters that make fights; it's the styles that make fights.
Yeah.
And one thing about Texas, they have, in essence, done what is a 180 from last year. Last year, stopping the run was their peanut butter and jelly. You could not do anything with Big Sweat and the other defensive tackle who also was a first round. I believe it's Byron Hall or something like that in the middle. They were stopped. They were damn good. This year, it seems like you cannot do anything with that secondary. Makuba has been fantastic, as we all knew he was. You know, everybody in the ACC knew right away, hey, they just got one of the best steals that you're going to see in the portal. He is fantastic. He's a first-team All-ACC guy. He's a baller. He's going to dominate. And we all knew what was happening there. Some other folks didn't. With that being said, their secondary is immaculate, but the problem is they are not as good at stopping the run. And yes, stopping Jeremiah Smith is going to be important, but that Travion kid, you know, he can run that rock a little bit. He can do a little something with it. So I think that's how that works out. And then on the other side, you're right. James Franklin has slayed the big game loser narrative, right? And some people would argue, oh, SMU and Boise State, two teams that are either in Group of Five conferences or were in Group of Five conferences a year ago.
Yeah.
Those don't really count. But he is, I mean, you've got to give credit where credit's due. We're not going with the no true Scotsman fallacy. At some point in time, we've got to acknowledge he's won a big game. These are big games. What games can be bigger than the playoff? However, I think Freeman is one of the best young coaches in college football.
In my opinion, he coached circles around Kirby Smart.
I agree.
I was so impressed.
I agree. He coached circles around Kirby Smart. And there's also something I want you to pay attention to in the trenches. Notre Dame's left tackle situation has been a mess since their starter got hurt in camp, and it's been a true freshman out there. But it's only been a mess in terms of pass pro. In terms of running the ball, all of the best pass rushers in college football go about 230 to 250, somewhere in there. And every single time that young man gets his hands on one of those guys, he treats him like a really, really annoying bouncer that does his job way too well. Hey, get out the club, man. I don't need you in this club. And Jeremiah loves running behind him. So I see Notre Dame winning that game, but I see them ultimately losing to Ohio State in a very close national championship. Because again, in terms of the Notre Dame Penn State game, that game will be won within 3 yards of the line of scrimmage. I don't think Aller or Leonard have that much of it, give either team that much of an advantage. I think Warren is a fantastic tight end. He's a fantastic tight end. But last time I checked, they got some guy over there named Xavier Watts, who's he's a pretty good safety. So I think he's going to do a good job of kind of being the top part of that bracket. And again, you can't eliminate a guy like Warren, but you can at least hope to contain him, which I think will happen there. And then on one-on-one matchups on the outside, I think Notre Dame will be fine. So this game will ultimately come down to if either one of the quarterbacks completely wets the bed, which I don't see happening. Therefore, I think Notre Dame has just a slight edge in the trenches, especially with the dual Carter status for the game being up in the air.
Yeah, and just so people know the betting odds for these semifinal games, Ohio State is favored by 6 against Texas. Notre Dame is favored by 1.5 against Penn State. And in my estimation, whoever advances from the Texas-Ohio State side would be favored against either team that advances from the Penn State-Notre Dame side. But as we've all found out, hypotheticals and betting odds don't mean a whole lot. We still have to play the games. But by the way, something I saw, and I'm sure this is not necessarily the majority of the Oregon fan base. You know, sometimes you see things on social media. I don't want to assume every Oregon fan feels this way. But I did see, a lot of complaining on their side about, the committee, the bracket they put them in, having a matchup against Ohio State in their first game. I mean, the way that I look at it, Kenton, that's a team that they beat in the regular season. And if you're the top team in the country, you should be able to beat everybody else in the field. Like I don't really, yeah, they had a harder road than some of the other teams in the playoff field, but it's like, I'm not going to blame the committee for not winning the championship when if you're the best team in the country, you should be able to beat any of those teams, Ohio State included, who you beat in the regular season.
Absolutely. And Dan Lanning had his team woefully underprepared. That's not anybody else's fault. Like, I don't care what you say or how you say it. The game was 34-8 at halftime.
Yeah.
This is not a situation where we are looking at a game where you're like, man, this game was so close, and maybe if just one or two plays had gone Oregon's way. 34-8 at halftime. I don't give a damn how hard you think your side of the bracket is. You cannot be in a situation where, had it not been for some very, very good empty calories, y'all were going to look like the biggest suckers that were out of this playoff. I don't think anybody else had a lead as big as 26 points for a majority of or any point in time in their game except Penn State against SMU. And I was told that SMU is never allowed back now. So, Oregon, congratulations. This is your first playoff game with the 12-team format. Should we never let you back? Things are interesting here. But in all seriousness, this is just a game where, again, Dan Lanning had them underprepared. And Ohio State, something about that Michigan loss, it did something to them. It did something to them because it is clear that they have been putting belt to behind ever since.
No doubt. Well, let's talk some ACC on the other side because both Miami and Clemson are looking for defensive coordinators right now, and it seems like they're looking at some of the same candidates. Plus, I don't want to make Kenton too angry, but I've got to ask him what's going on with NC State in the transfer portal. Don't leave, Kenton. Don't leave. We want to keep it locked right here, my friends. We're not done yet on this brand new episode of Locked On ACC. Oh, we're certainly not done yet with Rocket Money. Did Rocket Money help you find any subscriptions you forgot about or that you were paying for twice? That's happened to me before. I had a few subscriptions I didn't even realize I was still paying for, and Rocket Money made it so easy to track them all down. It's like having a personal assistant for your finances. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps you find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps you lower your bills so you can grow your savings. It brings everything together in one place, whether it's subscriptions, your spending habits, even goals that you want to hit this year. Rocket Money has over 5 million users and has saved a total of $500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members up to $740 a year when using all of the app's premium features. One of the best features for me is the subscription tracker. I've used it to cancel services I wasn't using anymore. I've already saved a ton. Plus, with their goals feature, which I love, I've been able to automatically set aside money for my future. No more stressing about budgeting every month. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/lockedon today. That's rocketmoney.com/lockedon. rocketmoney.com/lockedon. Thank you for making Locked On ACC your first listen and your first watch today. He is Kenton Gibbs from Locked On Wolfpack. I am Alex Donno from Locked On Canes. All right, so Kenton, it's I think it's probably too bad for Dabo Swinney that Brent Venables still has his head coaching job in Oklahoma because Dabo's looking for a defensive coordinator, and it's like, oh, can you imagine if maybe Oklahoma had let Venables go? There could have been a perfect reunion there, but it looks as though a couple of the names that Dabo seems to be going after, Tim Banks, who's the current DC at Tennessee. Their defense has been, really good for the past 4 years. And apparently Banks is maybe open to a move because his contract is up in Tennessee. He might want to test the water somewhere else. Although it also sounds like Mario Cristobal at Miami might be interested in Banks as well. Last I heard, Banks maybe prefers the Clemson move. Then Miami and Clemson also both seem to be looking at Tyler Santucci from Georgia Tech, who did really good work there this year, was at Duke prior to that. So maybe some of the same candidates are being looked at by Miami and Clemson. And, I would say based on the way the past year went, Miami probably needs to hit a home run on the defensive side, even more than Clemson does right now.
Well, I wholeheartedly disagree. I think both of these teams are in need of a very strong defensive coordinator hire just for different reasons. Mario Cristobal had his best team ever, and it's like, oh, That was, you did all that to still fall short of the playoff, which I don't think they should have. But hey, it is what it is. With that being said, when you come back from that, you cannot have another defensive performance next year like you had the year before, or even close, because you're not going to have the same level of offensive talent. That's just a fact. Unless Miami lands every single big name portal player that they've been looking at, what are you going to do? How can you say with a straight face, hey, I know we're going to be fine. I know that we're going to be good offensively when you're losing the most prolific quarterback that has ever gone through there in terms of best season. You're losing.
By the way, let me say something as a side note, because it's something I wish for all the Miami fans who were like, oh, this was a totally wasted year this year. I wish that you guys could see the season that just had, and it was a disappointing finish for Miami, no doubt. I'm not making excuses for it. I'm just saying I wish that you guys complaining could see it through a child's eyes, because Kenton, my 6, soon to be 7-year-old, 3 months ago, could not care less about football. Didn't care about it, wasn't into it. Like, Cam Ward single-handedly made my son a huge fan, and he loves football now, mostly because of Cam Ward. So if there's one successful thing that Miami was able to do this year, it was able to convert my son, and now all he wants to do is watch football.
Well, look at that. It is a big deal from that standpoint, and this is why I say that this is the reason he needs to knock this out, because you've got momentum. You can't lose it. You cannot lose that momentum. And then you go to the other side and you look at Dabo. Dabo, you're in the national ball game, dude. You're not, with all due respect to 90% of the other brands in the ACC, you're not in the same ball game as them, Dabo. You're not in the same ball game. I think it's Miami, Florida State, Clemson, and then kind of everybody else in terms of like your brand in that national game. Rightly or wrongly, it's not about who's won the most traditionally or recently. It's just about that type of brand. You cannot afford to take a step back or to take a step to where you're staying at 9-3. Dabo did a hell of a job this year. Them winning the ACC championship was something I did not predict. And like I said, I've come on this show and I've eaten plenty of crow, okay? I ate it baked, I ate it boiled, I ate it fried, dyed, and laid to the side. But with that being said, Dabo has to get this hire right, because if you want to stay in that national ball game, Clemson has always hung their hat on defense. And if you hire an unserious defensive coordinator, all of that starts to fall immediately.
What's going on with NC State in the transfer portal? Because it seems like every time I check the transfer portal tracker, they're losing another defensive back, another defensive player. And this transfer portal has been rough, because it's just become, you don't know who you're going to lose. Nobody seems loyal anymore. It's hard out there on those portal streets.
Me and Donno talked about this in pre-production. I told him he could do the show by himself if he wanted to talk about this.
That's why I saved this topic for last.
And
so we have most of the show in.
He's still snuck it in there like the old sneaky degenerate he is, by the way. You know what? Next time when you come down here, when you bring the family up to North Carolina, I'm going to tell Mrs. Donno, look at this FanDuel account. Check it out. Make sure everything's above board there, since we just hit people where it hurts. No, but in all seriousness, the Wolfpack got a new defensive coordinator, and you're always going to see a good amount of turnover when you change coordinators, the scheme changes and all that. I am particularly confused because when I think about schemes changing, I think it affects the back end the least out of anybody. Like when you talk about a 3-3-5 to a 4-3 to a 3-4, you get the most variance in the front. Hey, you stick with this guy is you stick with this guy is you stick with this guy. That is what it is, regardless of what the front is or what the blitz is or what the man coverage is, man coverage is man coverage. Like, that's just what it is. And even if we're talking about zone, most of the techniques are exactly the same, run from the exact same positions as defensive back. So I'm a little confused by the mass exodus. In some of these guys, it's like, hey, they've got bigger opportunities in terms of NIL. Brandon Cisse in particular, I called it before he stepped foot on NC State's campus. I watched his film. I said, that kid's going to be a star. I don't know how South Carolina and Clemson let him get out of state, but he's going to be a star in Raleigh. And, I mean, he's shown brightly this season before he moved on. And some of the other guys, you know, T-Mac Cooley's another one. He balled out, did great things this year. But some of these other guys, you know, when you talk about the other side of, well, why would they be leaving if it's not for a potential bigger check in NIL? Defensive coordinators, when coordinators change, you know, sometimes you just get that kind of itch to move and whatnot. And, you know, that's what I'm seeing here. So if you need guys that can cover, come to Raleigh. Apparently all of them are leaving. All of them got their U-Haul packed and they're ready to skedaddle.
Yeah, I mean, Miami's already added 3 DBs in the portal, but we could use a handful more. So maybe we'll send Coach Cristobal out to Raleigh, and of course, Miami's looking for a new defensive coordinator as well. Well, we appreciate everyone's time as always. Make sure you smash that like button and subscribe to Locked On ACC. Subscribe on YouTube. Make sure you subscribe to the audio version, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, the Odyssey app, wherever you get your pods, and make sure you're also checking out Kenton Gibbs and Grayson Boone on Locked On Wolfpack. Make sure you're checking me out on Locked On Canes. I'm sure Kenton and Grayson have been covering all the offseason movements with NC State as I have been for Miami. It's been a busy, crazy offseason for both of our teams, so make sure you check that out. And we'll talk to you again next time on another episode of Locked On ACC. We are part of the awesome Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.